Welcome into another episode of the At The Pylon podcast. Alongside Chandler Betts, my name is Nick Antonakas. Chandler, the offseason is certainly upon us now. We have reached our first official offseason episode. Last week, we obviously had the emergency reaction episode to Bill Belichick's announcement that he won't be returning to the team due to a mutual decision between the Patriots and himself. If you haven't seen that episode, make sure to go check it out for our instant reactions from the Bill Belichick saga. But not too long after that decision, the Patriots announced that they would be bringing in Jerod Mayo as the replacement head coach for Bill Belichick. He is expected to be introduced to the team this upcoming Wednesday at noon in a press conference for his sort of introduction to the team. But we figured that we kind of let the dust settle, let everything kind of fall into place before we react to this news. But we won't waste any more time with it here in our first off-season episode, Chandler. How did you feel about the Jerod Mayo hire? Obviously, we got some tastes of how you and I felt about it last episode in the Bill Belichick episode, but now that it actually happened, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's really impressive how quickly the Patriot season is already over next year. It's so wild. I'm obviously being over dramatic, but I'm very not pleased with the decision. And at the very least, been waiting since this news to get this part off my chest. At the very least, even if you're going to hire him, sure, go through the interview process. Why not? Why don't you want to get more information about all of these other coordinators, these successful organizations? Why don't you want to learn information about the Ravens offensive and defensive coordinators? Why don't you want to learn about, we'll get to talking about other GMs and how other teams build and scout for their programs. Why don't you want to just gain more knowledge? There's no rush. If it really was, like it's been reported, written in Mayo's contract for the past 2 years that he was going to be the next head coach, why not just go through the process anyways? I don't understand it. I think that it's stupid. I think that it's short-sighted, and I think that it's especially dumb if you are going to not immediately also hire a GM. Because what's the rush to get the head coach in if you can't even have the person that's going to build the program with him?
I have a couple points to react to what you just said, Chandler, and I agree with most of them. First off, the whole, I guess, idea around Jerod Mayo taking Bill Belichick's spot, like you said, has kind of been written on the wall since Belichick's 2-year extension that happened last year that kept Jerod Mayo in the system as assistant head coach. It was kind of set, at least in Robert Kraft's original plan, that Belichick was going to coach this past season, the 2024 season, and then from there is where Jerod Mayo would take over as the head coach, kind of be the predecessor and keep the Belichick era going, quote unquote, in a makeshift format. Now, following this season, how disappointing things were, how, I guess, exposed perhaps this Belichick model is. The Patriots decide to move on from Bill, their legendary 24-year head coach, 6 Super Bowl victories. Yet they don't even go through the process, like you said, of interviewing guys like Mike Vrabel, who I really wanted, I said last episode.
Yep.
Guys like Ben Johnson, who you said you really wanted last episode, Lions offensive coordinator, just helped lead the Lions to their first playoff victory in however somewhat years, 30 somewhat years. They don't even go
1991, I
through,
think, yeah.
yeah, 91. So, yeah, 33 years. They don't even go through that process of interviewing these candidates. Kraft stays locked in on keeping Mayo. And to me, this seems confusing because on one hand, Robert Kraft is like, all right, this whole Belichick thing isn't working here in New England anymore. We're going to move on. We're making the super tough decision to move on. Yet on the other hand, we're going to keep around the supposed replacement we had in place to kind of keep this Belichick model alive at a discount price. So to me, it's just ridiculous because on one hand, you preached change by shifting Bill Belichick out of the system. Yet on the other hand, you're implying that you want to keep things the same in New England, although it really didn't work this past year. And to add on to that, the whole conversation of we're not hiring general manager right now is flooding the scenes in terms of news. Phil Perry tweeted out 2 weeks or 2 days ago, I should say, what he knew about the Patriots front office situation. He said in a tweet, quote, "They are not expected to bring in a new general manager. It's anticipated by team sources that both Matt Groh and Elliott Wolf will remain with the Patriots and have prominent roles in personnel." So, yet another red flag in terms of the personnel issues were the issue with this team. Bill Belichick described all throughout the season his mixed roles in that. It was basically deemed that he was like the final decision call person. Yet at the same time, we're keeping the ones who are leading up to those decisions to pitch to Belichick in place, which I find ridiculous. I said this to my grandfather on the phone yesterday, before we shift back to you, about the whole why Bill Belichick isn't 100% to blame for these personnel issues. Sure, he made stupid mistakes like being pitched like, they put together this package of, look, we want to draft AJ Brown, Bill. Here it is. We did all this work, draft AJ Brown. And Bill Belichick says no. So, yes, that's Bill Belichick's mistake, of course. Not drafting AJ Brown is 10 times out of 10 a mistake. We've seen the player that he's panned out to be. That will never live us down. Yet I blame the personnel department of Matt Groh, Elliott Wolf, whoever the hell else is involved in these decisions, to have the second choice to Bill Belichick be someone like N'Keal Harry, who we drafted. Sure, you can say Bill Belichick is wrong for turning away a guy like AJ Brown in the draft. Yet if you have a guy like N'Keal Harry lined up in second place to be that next up best guy, if it's not AJ Brown, it's just a mistake. Why are you doing something like that? It just doesn't make any sense in terms of a personnel decision, which makes it even more confusing as to why we're keeping these guys around.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And to get a quote from Albert Breer and the Monday Morning Quarterback this past week, there's a quote saying that Kraft plans to, quote, empower a scouting department that over the years has had talented folks frustrated that they weren't being heard in the final decision-making process. I think that that is a cop-out answer to say we don't want to go pay another person. I think it's pretty simple. I think that this is there's a need for a wholesale change in bringing in players. However, I will concede that this past year's draft was very good. I feel as though it was kind of difficult to not have a good draft this past year with where we sat and how other teams picked. Um, but I really think that this is just all across the board the Kraft's least possible ambitious way to rebuild a culture that needs to be built. It's like how I talked about it last week before Mayo had been signed. We don't want to just hire the next Bill Belichick when he's not going to be Bill Belichick. We've seen how that's done. We've seen how that culture is being created, and we've seen how this culture has eroded over the past few seasons. Belichick apparently, via Seth Wickersham, also, quote, made it clear that he was ready to move on, telling confidants that Robert Kraft and his son, team president Jonathan Kraft, had eroded the culture he had built over 2 decades. I think that there are some dark
Boy.
times coming ahead for us, and simply put, this was the worst possible way to handle this situation quickly and inefficiently.
And to add on to that, Chandler, rumors circulating of money saving in terms of not bringing in a new general manager
Yep.
leads me to think about the coaching disaster of 2022, which really began the fan base's pushback against Bill Belichick. His decisions to bring on Matt Patricia and Joe Judge on limited deals, thanks to their recent firings from the Detroit Lions and New York Giants, respectively,
Yep. I
not
remember
naming
him.
them in official positions but just leaving them on the staff as play callers to save money was the real, I
Yeah.
guess, explanation behind that once the season ended. And Belichick got a bunch of flack for it, deservedly so if it was his decision. Yet with these sort of trends, naming a head coach really fast, not naming a general manager, and leading up to the decision that a general manager may not even be named in the first place. We might not even get one and we might just keep guys like Grow in the front office kind of dealing with things without that official role because we won't have to pay one. Leads me to think that if Robert Kraft is truly the problem with the New England Patriots, then you are right indeed that this would be a scary next couple of years for New England fans. As if Kraft was the real, I guess, problem behind this whole disaster following Brady leaving, it's pretty much irreversible now that we're going to have to endure another at least 3 years of pain until there's a change made at the top of the helm, which could see even like selling the team. As ridiculous as that sounds right now, and
Yeah.
as ridiculous as that would sound 5 years ago, coming off of our sixth Super Bowl win in the 2000s, it's just insane to even think about. Yet, when you consider these, I guess, issues and who's really at fault for them, the true culprit is going to be exposed in these next couple of years. As if things don't change in New England, it may be a call for Robert Kraft's head next.
Yeah, a lot of people all across the media when Brady left talk about was it Brady or was it Belichick? I could damn sure tell you it wasn't Robert Kraft.
It's,
And that's who we have left. And we're going to see some tough times here, like I've been saying. To quickly talk about the process, we spent so much time, or we spent so little time, excuse me, to hire the head coach. The GM is the one that we should be rushing for
yeah,
because we've talked about how you can't even interview other teams' coordinators until the 22nd of January. My top pick from last episode, Adam Peters, is now the general manager of the Commanders. He's gone. We're seeing all of these interviews happening right now. The only interview for head coaching that's happening right now, I believe, is Harbaugh, who just today completed his interview with the Chargers. Excuse
yep.
me. Um, they have the order completely wrong. Enough, but also, unless you have anything else about the process, I think that we should move on to actually talking about Jerod Mayo as a coach
Yeah, I
and
will
as the
after
next
I just
Patriots head
say this
coach.
quick after this quick bit to build off what you were saying. Not only is it important to name a general manager quicker than a head coach because of the whole you can't interview until after the 22nd point, which you brought up, but last week you and I were both slamming the number on Patriots absolutely 100% have to hit a 10 out of 10 in this upcoming draft or
Yep.
else they're screwed. And why are you doing that without a general manager appointed unless if
Yeah.
you're going to be stupid and run without one? The fact that there's a rumor circulating right now that we might name one after the draft is even more moronic than the terrible decision it would be to not name one at all. So it
Yeah.
seems like we're faced with bad and worse as the two possible outcomes in terms of naming a New England Patriots GM. But with that, I think it's a good transition point, Chandler. You're right to talk about Jerod Mayo himself as a head coach. Now, although he was sort of towards the bottom of our lists when you consider, I guess,
The bottom,
how
yeah,
we want to
of
think
mine.
the absolute bottom of
Yeah.
yours, but I guess towards the bottom half of mine, even though I didn't really make a full list. But as the season went on, I would say that although I started out on a point where I was like, I'd be happy with Mayo being our head coach, that trend kind of fell off a little bit because of how the season unfolded. But regardless, he's the guy we have now. What is your, I guess, anticipation of what he brings to the table for the New England Patriots?
So before that, I think you said a really important point there that throughout the course of the season, your opinion on Gerard Mayo has changed. Not necessarily because of the defense's performance, but because this stipulation in his contract was built in when the Patriots had gone 10-7 and had just lost in the wild card game. And then it was seemingly, according to some reports, reaffirmed and or confirmed after the Patriots went 8-9 and just barely missed the playoffs. This is an entirely different team, an entirely different organization. There have been reports throughout the season that the culture has been messed up from both Belichick and from player sources. We've seen with the getting rid of cornerback uh, Jack Jones. Thank you,
Oh
Jesus.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Getting rid of Jack Jones. We've seen with the Trent Brown reports. We've seen all of these things that frankly would not have happened. And if they had come out, or if they did happen, they didn't come out. Think probably the Malcolm Butler getting benched in the Super Bowl was possibly one of those situations. Never came out whether it was or wasn't, though.
Mm-hmm.
The culture is completely different. The standard is completely different. And we brought in a coach who has no play calling experience to hold a culture that has not performed well. Now, I did a little studying, little checking. Coaches that are active coaches that had not been play callers in their position before their first head coaching job. There are four of them. They are John Harbaugh, Zach Taylor, Dan Campbell, and Andy Reid. Really good list. Really good list. Caveat to all of those. John Harbaugh had spent 24 years of coaching experience as a special teams coordinator and a defensive backs coach at 6 different organizations. Zach Taylor was the Rams quarterback coach, assistant wide receivers coach, and he was a college offensive coordinator. He was also an NFL offensive coordinator for the Dolphins for a little bit. He'd been in 4 organizations, two in college, two in the pros, 12 total years of coaching experience. Dan Campbell, the closest comparison, 2 organizations as a coach, 4 as a player, and he had been an interim head coach before in Miami. Andy Reid called plays as the assistant head coach and quarterbacks coach. He'd been in 6 organizations and had 18 years of experience. Jerod Mayo has spent his entire career in one organization and has been a coach for how many years, Nick?
What, 3, 4?
4, yeah. Less than all of them. It's just you're hiring somebody. It's like in hockey. Hockey. It's a good example in hockey with the boys club. A lot of organizations just run. It's not what you know. It's who you know. There were throughout his entire career. There was a really cool interview of a couple of Patriots players back in probably 2010 ish, talking about Jerod Mayo being an extension of Belichick in the locker room, so much so that Brady called him Jerod Belichick. And we talked about how Jerod Mayo's brother is the assistant strength coach.
Yeah.
In that interview, Brady called him his real son. We're perpetuating this culture that isn't good. We're getting somebody who has never called plays, who has been in one organization, and while he's been a coach, team hasn't been good. 7-9, 10-7 in the maybe the flukiest 10-7 season in terms of what we need to build on right now. 2022 being 8-9, and then the worst point differential season since 1992 for the Patriots. What happened in 1993? We drafted a quarterback first overall.
Drew Bledsoe.
I've been very adamant about us needing a quarterback. I am afraid if we take a quarterback that we will ruin him if we do not get these coordinator jobs right, because I have no faith in Jerod Mayo. Will I support him? Absolutely. Will I support him by week 10? We will see.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point that you make about Mayo, Chandler. Just his lack of experience as a coach is daunting to really anybody who watches on. Um, that mixed with the fact that, he's very much Patriot way built, which on one hand made a lot of sense as to why he was the assistant head coach, why he was, I guess, proceeding to lead up Bill Belichick after he called it quits in terms of retiring, which was, I guess, the original plan following 2024. If things went differently in 2023 and he got some more wins, he probably could have achieved the record by 2024. Um, Obviously, things went extremely different in that regard, yet Jerod Mayo's still here. Jerod Belichick is still here. I thought that was a great
Yeah.
addition there. But still, when you consider what we have in a guy like Mayo, obviously former Patriot, he played here. That relates to, I guess, what we wanted to see out of Vrabel, except Vrabel on the flip side already holds this sort of, coaching experience, of course. He coached, head coach of the Titans, assistant coaching before then. He
Yep.
has experience, I guess, behind the bench, which Jerod Mayo does not have. Now, leading up to the example of the NHL that you brought up, Martin St. Louis to the Montreal Canadiens. Obviously, Martin St. Louis, highly acclaimed NHL
Yep.
player. I'm literally blanking right now if he's in the Hall of Fame. If he's not, he probably should be one day. But still, career with the Rangers, the Lightning, back and forth around the league. Huge success. He's a type of guy that can step into a team like the Montreal Canadiens to reset their culture because they needed a culture reset. And in hockey, that works more so because, a coach can kind of shift easier into that role than you can in football, just because in football, you have two separate halves, offense and defense. And you need to work your way up that tree to the head coaching position at the top. Hockey coach is just kind of a hockey coach, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's easier to work your way up that branch faster. And we saw that with St. Louis. He related to players extremely well, and that worked out pretty great in Montreal. He's still there today. Now, in terms of Mayo, he has that relation, that tie, even more specifically in this case to the team, because he actually played for the Patriots, unlike Martin St. Louis and the Canadians. But still, you have to just have that coaching experience around your belt in the NFL, or else in a lot of scenarios, it's not going to work out. Especially considering that he's never been a head coach before. You saw those four candidates you named off that didn't have prior head coaching experience that eventually became NFL head coaches that we have today. All four of those guys, plenty of experience beforehand, and they've all panned out very well because of it. Mayo doesn't exactly have that to offer, which is where the real concern comes in. But same boat as you, Chandler. I'm here to back him up now that he's the head
Yep.
coach of the Patriots. As much as I didn't want to see it, now that he's kind of in that spot, we're kind of committed to him now, so we're kind
Yeah.
of stuck with that fact, whether we like it or not. But it does seem like he does want to bring in some players. He was recently quoted saying, part of it is the X and O's. This is kind of
I
off
saw
the
that.
dome
Yeah.
here. Yeah, part of it's the X and O's, but the other half is having a talented roster. So
Yep.
hurrah to him wanting good players, but we still have the
Yeah.
same personnel people in place. So good luck if that happens. But regardless, why don't we dive into some, I guess, coordinator positions that you preached being extremely important for the Patriots to hit on
Yep.
in terms of not flunking on a quarterback. God forbid we end up landing one. So starting off with the most recent report, Tem Lukabu,
Yep.
Lukabu, he's being interviewed right now for the Patriots' potential defensive coordinator position. Right now, he is the linebackers coach for the Carolina Panthers.
Yep.
I was a little bit wary on this, Chandler, before the episode started, obviously because the Panthers were the only team to really beat us out in terms of being bad this year, clinching the first overall pick. Sure, you can say the Commanders because they got number 2, but they still beat us. But you thought it would be a pretty good choice if the Patriots ended up going with him for the potential defensive coordinator position. And part of that is because of his ties to Boston College, which you have some information on.
Yeah. He was a really effective defensive coordinator when he was at Boston College. They were top 50 in a bunch of stats across the country. Top 50 may not sound good, but that's out of 130-ish teams. Uh, they were aesthetically playing very well under his time. He's developed players, but crucially, he's that whole Panthers defense absolutely not the reason that they stunk. There were multiple stats where they were top 5 this year. Their defensive coordinator is actually getting head coaching interviews. His name is hard to pronounce, so I'm not gonna give it a shot yet until he gets a head coaching job. But he got a bunch of interviews last year. He was actually the Broncos defensive coordinator a few seasons ago. Uh, but Tem Lukabu would be a good signing. He has ties to the area. He's been across a bunch of different places. At the end of the day, though, it's not the defense I'm worried about. Though, with all the reports of coordinators being centered around Steve Belichick and Brian Belichick, I believe that's his name, right? The other
Yep.
one's name? Yeah.
Yep.
Um, that they've been offered to come back. I don't see them doing so. I got in an argument online with somebody about that. I really don't think that they would, because why would you?
They're going
This
to follow
team,
their father. Of
yeah,
course they are. Yet, and the audacity for Kraft to be like, you know what? Let's try and bring those guys back, even though I just hired your dad. Hey, kids, come on in for a job here at the Patriots. I just fired your dad. No,
yeah,
that's not going to happen unless if I was pitching before the episode, which you quickly shot down, the possibility that maybe another team won't let Belichick appoint his own children to be in higher position like coordinators right out the gate, as they had no name titles in New England, really, although they were the play callers.
yeah. If you're the Cowboys because they obviously just lost, or depending on how the Eagles do tonight, or really any team, if you can get Bill Belichick, I don't think that the sticking point is I don't want Steve and Brian. Like why would that be the hill that you die on?
Yeah.
Because he's proven good defensive play caller. I would even say very good defensive play caller at this stage. I think that defense was completely devoid of talent, and I will give Mayo credit where credit is due in this sense, both in the sense that he is going to hire young coordinators and a young staff, which I think is good because there needs to be a youth injection in the understanding of our organization. But I don't think it's going to be enough, and I don't think that he has the connections to make the proper young hirings. But going to Belichick, I really think that there's no chance that Steve comes back. He's proven he's a good young play caller. I don't necessarily say it yet, but I think that there could be a head coaching opportunity in his future. Maybe a little bit off of name, but a lot off of his performance this year. Completely devoid of talent because of all the injuries. Top 10 defense. Really impressive. It's going to stink to see him go. Optically, you obviously can't fire Bill and then hire Steve, nor should you. But I think that we're letting the wrong person go.
Yeah, when you think about all these things, Chandler, it's really tough to see a guy like Steve go as likely as it is because the defense was so successful, as you said. And although part of that is attributed to Mayo and his efforts, at the end of the day, he wasn't the play caller. So that's really the focal point of Steve's strength behind the bench for the New England Patriots. Now, in terms of, I guess, other rumors I've heard, not really official ones, but people have been calling on Twitter for the Patriots to try and make a vouch at Dolphins wide receiver coach Wes Welker, uh,
Mm.
former Patriots wide receiver. Bring him in as the
Bring in the
offensive
boys club.
coordinator.
Bring in the boys club.
That would definitely be interesting, but it makes me consider who would we even reach to as an offensive coordinator? Right now, the rumor is we've looked at a lot of guys inside the building. We've also looked at guys outside the building,
It's
specifically
good.
Josh McDaniels,
That's
even
not good.
though that's not good, even though he was really packaged to being returned with Belichick. I don't think if Belichick goes to the Cowboys that they're going to allow him to bring in McDaniels as the OC. But I mean, I never really know. I mean, you know, anything can
Yeah,
happen with
there
Belichick.
haven't been many reports coming out. Uh, Thinking about it, Welker may not be the worst call. I don't think that it should happen, but to my knowledge, he's been in two buildings and he's been the wide receivers coach for two teams, and it's the 49ers and it's the Dolphins. Two offenses under the Shanahan branch that are frankly very good, but I don't necessarily want him because that's I just don't think that it's the right call for somebody who is probably the fourth most important person on their offensive staff to bring them in to be the most important maybe person in the organization in terms of our immediate success because of how crucial this job is going to be. The ideal situation is that we get an offensive coordinator and he's awesome and then someone else takes him because that's what always happens with good offensive play callers. That's why I think that offensive coaches are so in vogue because you're not going to lose your offensive play caller. As we're kind of seeing right now, there's been a shift in the league from a very offensive league to a more balanced scoring stature right now, and how a lot of inventive defense has been becoming more prevalent. I think that it's easier to hire a defensive coordinator than an offensive coordinator. It's easier to hire a defensive coach than an offensive coach. That's why there's a lot of offensive head coaches.
Yeah, and when you consider, I guess, who the Patriots offensive coordinator would be, like, could you pitch one out? I mean, as much as I'd want to see
Oh,
Ben Johnson, there's no way he's
there's
not
no way.
becoming a head coach. So
Yeah,
he's basically off the board. Who because honestly, I mean, obviously, I don't want somebody from within the organization right now. As hyped up as Bill O'Brien was when he was coming into the organization last year, this whole
just
season has
frankly
just put a
fell off a
sour on
cliff.
him. Yeah, so he's got to be gone, unfortunately. But is there anybody that you could really see the Patriots bringing in as that OC to revitalize
I'm
our
trying to think of
offense?
names. I really don't have many off the top of my head because it's been completely radio silent.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, West doesn't sound too bad to me because he's been the wide receivers coach for two frantically or I guess outstanding offenses in the 49ers and the Dolphins.
yeah.
So, you know,
There's one that I have. I'm
in
looking at it
terms of
right
developing a
now.
quarterback though, that's a little bit iffy. So,
Yeah.
consider
There
me
is
the
one that I
quarterback,
have
please.
right here. It's not on the list in front of me. This is just one that I know fairly well, and I'll explain why quickly. Liam Cohn could be an option. He was the Rams offensive coordinator in 2021. He was the Kentucky offensive coordinator in 2020 and in 2022. And he is former UMass quarterback. That's why he's on the brain. Uh, he is a very bright play caller coming from the McVay offense. developed a Will Levis in his best season in college. Had a pretty good season this past year with um, Devin Leary, who's going to be in the draft probably. Had a season with Matthew Stafford, as again worked closely as a wide receivers coach and a quarterbacks coach for McVay. That could be an option. I believe he just got an interview for some
The
offensive coordinator
Bears.
position. The
The
Bears,
Bears.
yes, that's what it was.
That's what
I
I'm
did
seeing
see that.
here.
Yeah. So he is definitely an option. Some other ones just on this list that look interesting to me. Shane Waldron, he's the current Seahawks offensive coordinator. I don't know why he would leave Seattle to come here, but he has experience in New England. Zach Robinson could be cool. He's the quarterbacks coach, I believe, for the Rams right now. He's on this list. Passing game coordinator and quarterbacks coach. Yeah. Um, there's simply Mayo doesn't have any connections. He's going to. I think it might be just a completely out of left field one where one day we're just like, oh, X person is getting an interview, and then the next day X person got the job, and maybe they'll be good, maybe they won't. When those reports start coming out, I will do all of the research and I will tell you, the fans, if they will be good or not. But um, I really can't prognosticate right now when there's been absolutely no information coming out. I don't know what he even wants. None of us do. He has no offensive history. How do we know what he wants when he's only been in a building as a coach with a bad offensive staff? McDaniels, sure, he's been acclaimed by a bunch of people. Edelman recently about being an excellent X's and O's guy, not a good player manager, not a good staff manager. His X's and O's were pretty good considering how fluky that season was to get the absolute most out of Mac Jones. But most recently, he's been around Bill O'Brien, who had like a game and a half where he was a good offensive coordinator this year. And frankly, there is very little promise in the offense, and that is a direct reflection of what Mayo's schemes are going to look like and what he wants in an organization because he knows no different.
To bounce off what you said quickly, Chandler, about McDaniels being an X and O's guy, obviously we saw his personnel management in Las Vegas was horrible. The whole locker room hated him. But Mayo has specifically praised himself on the fact that he's able to communicate to his players. I believe there was a long quote about he's like, I can communicate to anybody, men, women, black, white, whoever it is. Like, I can communicate to everybody. And I feel like I'm ready for this head coaching position to help people grow around me. So,
What else is he supposed to say?
yeah, but I mean, if you put a guy like Mayo, who I don't know is like an astound communicator, with a guy like Josh McDaniels, who's a great X's and O's guy on offense, maybe that musters into something
If
good.
you
Probably
if you
not,
have
but maybe. I don't know. I'm just throwing stuff at a wall, hoping it sticks.
if you have to say you're good at something and someone else isn't saying it, are you really that good at it? Also, maybe he is. He has a lot of his defensive players. Mac Wilson
Yeah, Mac Wilson loves him. I was
pumped.
just about to
He's
say.
pumped. Yeah. What did I say?
Christian
Literally, like,
Gonzalez reposted on his story. He's hyped
oh
from
yeah.
the
What did I
three
say?
months you were with the organization. Nice.
What did I say 5 weeks ago, or roughly, probably less than that, even about the report that came
Anonymous
out about
report. Yeah, it was 3 weeks ago.
who did I say it probably was? Mac
Mac
Wilson.
Wilson.
And what just came out immediately after that? Mac Wilson loves
Mac
him.
Wilson praise.
I'm so surprised. I'm not surprised. Um, there's no. This is bad times. I have no faith in us. We have the second most cap in the league without a GM. We have the third pick in the draft without a GM. We have all of this without any offensive experience in the coaching staff. Bill O'Brien better be gone. Josh McDaniels, I highly doubt he wants to coach under Jerod Mayo, one of his former players. Um, there's nothing else. This is not good. I again,
To
yeah, continue. I'm just rambling. I'm just sad rambling.
to end the episode, I have, I guess, an analogy for what the Patriots situation right now is. You have a four-piece puzzle, and when it's put together, it basically creates a contender. The four pieces are as follows: a top three draft pick, a shit ton of money to spend in the offseason. You have a top 10 defense already. And fourth, I guess team history, sure, because I can't think of another piece, and a
Yeah.
puzzle cannot be three pieces, so four pieces. Team history. The person trying to solve this puzzle right now is a newborn baby. The four pieces are right there All you have to do is just put all these pieces together. But the person solving the puzzle was just born, so they cannot solve a puzzle. So, in that fact, we better grow up pretty damn fast before the NFL draft, or else we're going to have this perfect puzzle sitting in front of us, not being built, and the window's going to close and it's going to become like an 84-piece puzzle or something stupid like that. Use the money, use the draft pick, use the top 10 defense that we already have, and we'll be better when we have a healthy one. And use your team history that already has you established with a dedicated fan base that's not ready to just like sit in your stadium with an empty crowd. You know what I mean? Like, Patriots fans are passionate. We're going to show up to the game. This first game of the season next year is going to be sold out, regardless of whether or not this past season was 4-13. So you have all those resources there. Just don't mess it up. You got to grow up and put this pieces of the puzzle together, and you have to do it fast. But Chandler, the rest of the offseason is far ahead of us. We're going to have episodes coming out every Monday for you guys here on the At The Pylon podcast. So make sure to stay tuned for that. Our next episode will be coming out next week. More off-season stuff all throughout the offseason and beyond. So stick with us here on At The Pylon. But for now, I'll throw in the white flag alongside Chandler Betts. My name is Nick Antonakas. Enjoy playoff football without the Patriots, everybody.